Welcome to the Tom Matt Show. You are walking through the front door of the refirement zone. And now, your host, Tom Matt.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Tom Matt Show. Thank you so much for being with us. However you're picking us up on the broadcast, on radio, on the podcast, on the stream on YouTube, or any of the video clips that Vanessa puts together for us. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for subscribing and all of the good things and the comments. And, we just continue to it's an organic thing, everybody. If you want to do a podcast, you want to do a radio program, or you want to get into content creation, it's all about just a slow grind. It's all about just getting going, staying on top of your game, and just keep grinding. Like last week's episode with a MSU legend, the controller, an MSU legend, the controller. I wasn't too sure about the title of that episode because I'm like, God, that sounds a little controlling to call it the controller. But you know what? He is the controller, David Brower, for many, many years at the university. And I really had no idea the depth of what a controller CFO does at an institution like Michigan State University, managing billions of dollars. And then the old stories. I got more good. Dave's going to be back because we had a conversation yesterday and it was really funny. And it's like some of the historical, now he starts to get it. First time guests start to get it. They said, like, hey, this is fun stuff. We can tell some really cool stories. Like today, we're going to have some fun with Dr. Lawrence Pfaff is going to be with us. Ready, Set, Change is the name of his book, and that's what I'm calling this episode. Why knowing what to do isn't enough. Why knowing what to do isn't enough. Isn't that the truth? And, when we first were connected with Larry, very interested. He's very on top of his game. He's got all kinds of great stories. He's a licensed professional counselor in Michigan, originally since 1990, 15 years as a professor of psychology, former dean, but he's got a very diversified background, very, very diversified. And we were just talking about this a little bit pre-production. I'm like, Larry, save it for this is your life segment. Your segment's coming up here. We'll talk about published researcher, done all kinds of stuff, lifelong member of the APA and SIOP. I have no idea what those acronyms mean, but they sound fancy. Author of multiple assessment instruments used in organizations. That's the difference. And Larry will talk about his difference in his career because he is a psychologist, but he's done some other things in industry, which gives him a very unique perspective to come at this issue. Why knowing what to do isn't enough. We get up against these obstacles all the time. Without much further ado, I could go on and on about New Year's resolutions and all kinds of stuff like that. We've talked about this a million times. Let's talk to the man who's got a plan. I like people who have a plan. Dr. Lawrence Pfaff's our guest today. I want to welcome to the show, Larry Pfaff, ED, LPC. What's happening there, Doc? How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. And I'll start out by telling you what APA and SIOP is.
Enlighten me. I love being educated.
The American Psychological Association is the APA, and the SIOP is Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology. Ooh. So those are the industrial shrinks who go in and help try and design systems and all that. It's the knowing what to do. I grew up in a middle-class family with a father who worked in construction, and nobody had gone to college before that, with 6 siblings, and so I involved in athletics and thought that we knew everything, right? And the whole idea was that, well, if you tell somebody what they need to do differently, they'll just do it. If you point out to somebody that they're wrong about something, they'll just automatically change. And we still kind of have that belief in our society. We think that if we just teach kids the right things, they'll just do them. If I just know what to do, I'll do it. In fact, there's a good book by a man named Anders Ericsson who actually is the world's authority on what it takes to become an expert. He studied
He's expertise. The 10,000 hour rule guy.
Exactly. And in his book, though, he tells you that the 10,000 hour rule really isn't true, that was developed by Malcolm Gladwell. It's not really him.
Malcolm Gladwell. I've read all of Malcolm Gladwell's stuff, Larry. And so that Erickson's quoted throughout the book, and it's pretty funny that Malcolm Gladwell made a fortune off of the 10,000 hour rule, and it's not even accurate. It kind of is. Sort of.
It kind of is. It's basically what it says, and it fits right in with what I'm talking about. It says that you have to practice a lot. Anybody who's good, who becomes an expert at anything, takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of effort on your part. It's not something, we have this myth of talent. All you have to be is talented and everything will be okay. And your kickoff to this episode is absolutely true. To be effective in content, you have to work at it. You have to work every day. But to be successful as a consultant in my career, I had to work at it every day. I had to market to companies and corporations and get CEOs to hire me to be their advisor.
Because you were in a different phase. Let's not jump ahead here, Larry. Let's set yourself up here. Talk about your family a little aspect. We don't want to piece this thing out and get warmed up with the family and all that. But that's the thing, everybody. Dr. Pfaff is very much a kind of an outlier when it comes to this topic. That's why he's qualified to write this book. But go ahead, please talk about your family a little bit and a little bit of your historical perspective.
Yeah. 7 kids in the family. I'm the youngest. So I'm the youngest of 7, 5 brothers, 1 sister. I was the one picked on and pushed and all that sort of thing. Went to college, was very good in math and science in high school, was an athlete in high school, played sports in Michigan, lived in the Detroit area. Went to college, was good in math and science, so I became a physics major. I studied physics and got my degree in physics. I played Division III football back in college, was decent at it. I played at Kalamazoo College for those people in Michigan. Actually, I'm in their athletic Hall of Fame. I'll brag.
Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's huge, man.
So I was pretty good, but when I was in college, I was there to play football, and I didn't care much about my GPA, although I had a great GPA in high school. I was all the good test scores and all that. 3/4 of the way through my degree, I realized I didn't want to be in physics. I like the science stuff, but I did not see myself as a physicist. So what was I going to do? So the easiest thing was finish the physics degree and become a teacher. So I got into teaching and taught in public schools for a few years, math and science, and kind of enjoyed that, but it really wasn't the best for me. I tried some of the coaching stuff. I was actually worked in the UP, taught in the UP, and was an assistant football coach and some of those types of things. And then I got, the change was I got offered a job in higher education to work in admissions, basically, which is sales. And I went and did that for a couple of years and enjoyed the interaction part of that, the human part of that. And I liked higher education. And so I had people saying, well, you ought to stay in higher education. And they said, well, the only way to do that, though, is you have to go get a graduate degree. And I had no clue what I was going to get my graduate degree in. I went and sat down with a couple of people I trusted who were good advisors, sort of mentors of mine. And they said, you're really good at interacting with people. You ought to go into something like psychology or counseling.
You never thought of that on your own, Larry?
No, I thought, sure, why not? I'll just do that. Now I kind of had an inkling because the teaching part I liked. I liked the interactive part of the teaching. I didn't like the bureaucracy of it, but I liked the interactive. Yeah, I liked the people part. So I enrolled in graduate school at Western Michigan University, and I was admitted on a temporary basis, and within 6 months, I was loving it. Within 12 months, I applied to the doctoral program, and I was crazy. If I tell people today what I did my master's and my doctorate, which included a full-time internship, and my dissertation in 3 years and 8 months.
Ooh, baby. That's smoking. I can tell you that. Dr. Larry Pfaff is with us, everybody. Psychologist, ED, LPC, licensed professional counselor. Ready, Set, Change is the title of his book. Why Knowing What to Do Isn't Enough. Fantastic book. And it's something that, when we get stuck, we run into, or we have issues with trying to help people, assist people, show them the light, perhaps go through the change, all kinds of stuff that I've talked about for years, and why sometimes it works and most of the time it doesn't. We've got the guy here today who can help us make it work a little bit more. Dr. Larry Pfaff with us today. Ready, Set, Change. Why Knowing What to Do Isn't Enough. This is the Tom Mann Show.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Tom Matt Show. Thank you again for joining us. This week, talking about psychology and how to get things done. How to really, why knowing what you do isn't enough is the subtitle to the very awesome book, Ready, Set, Change by our guest today, Dr. Lawrence Pfaff. Before we go there, we got to talk about Brock, and the selling team, because without Brock helping us, sponsoring us, we can't pull off what we do here. And for 15 years, we've been doing this radio program, and we're very, very grateful to all the sponsors who've sponsored us over the years. And if you're in the mode for looking for a unique opportunity to sponsor, maybe we're your ticket. We'll see. Got to be a good fit, just like with what Brock does, because we created the Reality of Real Estate whole series of episodes. Now we've got 25 or 30 of them on the website, tommattshow.com. Go there, check it out. But Brock Fletcher and the selling team of Keller Williams Realty, you guys have heard me just brag on them so much because we love them so much. And this is truthful. They're the most trustworthy people you'll ever deal with. They won't force you into anything. And more than anything, Brock likes to build a relationship. Stacy likes to build a relationship. Mikey Deadman, all of the crew over there, they like to build a relationship, and they all work as a team together. Call these numbers. 517-853-6408 is the office number. Brock's cell phone number. Tell him you heard it from Tommy, and that way he'll know. As soon as you say Tommy, he says he'll know it's radio. 517-303-3262. 517-303-3262. Text Brock. He enjoys that. He takes any kind of messaging you want, whatever floats your boat. You can go to their website, kwsellingteam.com, which is an awesome website. You'd love it. Awesome. So nice. Sell your home without hassles, just like we did with Big House Holt and buying a little house Lansing, where we're recording this episode today. Brock is the man. When they start to invest their marketing money, and I can tell you from my own experience, you guys, he invests way ahead of time, way before you get your listing, because he wants to have all of that done ahead of time so that when you come to him, it's time to roll. It's where the rubber meets the road. It's time to go. And so that's all there is to it. Again, 517-303-3262 is Brock's cell phone number, kwsellingteam.com, kwsellingteam.com. And last, I want to say thank you and hello to Joan Wright of Williamston, where she's a good listener of the show on WKER at Michigan State University on Sundays at 5. And she's also a big fan of Brock's and our radio program. So thank you, Joan, for paying attention to what we do, and for you can send us suggestions or anything you want over there. Okay. Hope you're doing well. And we'd all like to talk about you every week. All right. Back to our show today. Ready, Set, Change. Why knowing what to do isn't enough. Outstanding book. I have the author, Dr. Lawrence Pfaff, with me today. Larry's a cool guy. I mean, when we were talking pre-show yesterday, going through, logistics of the radio show and all these kind of things, like to ask, the story behind the story. And Larry, you were starting to talk about, you've had your life is filled with refinement zone moments, with having the physics degree and then moving into Kalamazoo College, getting in the Hall of Fame over there, playing some football. Good for you and all that. But then you shifted gears and you got into this business of the business of psychology. I'd like to say it's the business of psychology, not the psychology of psychology. Can you kind of explain your journey with that? And then, we'll get to the why behind the book, but let's talk about your career. What qualifies you to put you in this very unique position?
Yeah, I got into it, and my program the graduate program was actually to be a therapist. And I realized partway through that program, doing therapy with people, that I couldn't do that full time. I just said, I can't sit and listen to individual problems all day long. So I went and talked to an advisor, and he said, well, you ought to be thinking about doing organizational stuff. So I actually spun off into that. And I actually, my doctorate wasn't 90 hours like typical. Mine was like 120 hours, because I actually, in that short period of time, did extra work to look in organizations and that type of thing. And so I found that therapy stuff fit in organizations beautifully. It's the same concepts, whether it's one person changing or a whole organization changing. It's the same types of concepts. And I had this unique talent of being able to apply that and look at it and say, how do I apply this stuff with therapy to a group of 100 or a group of 1,000? And my science background came into play there, because I thought all you got to do is do good measuring up front and show people where they're wrong, and they'll poof change. it would just, magic.
Just like magic.
Yeah. It's magic. And I tell the story briefly in the book where, my first 10 years of doing consulting work, almost 15 years, I was frustrated because I would give people good information and give people good feedback and give them good action steps, and the majority wouldn't change. They just didn't do it. And I was feeling like I was a loser. I was a failure. I went and talked to people I knew I'd gotten to know who were doing the same work. And I said, I only get 15, 20% of these people actually change. And they looked at me and said, boy, you're doing really well. And I said, what do you mean I'm doing really well? They said, that's good. What you're doing is good. You're lucky you're getting 20%. And that's where I couldn't figure out what I got to do something different. There's got to be some key to this. And I happened across an article in the American Psychologist done by 3 guys with addicts. They studied addicts, and they found out that it wasn't just enough knowing what to change. There was a psychological readiness process that people had to go through. So they were dealing with the hardest of the hardest. When you think about getting addicts to give up their addiction, that's harder than getting somebody to, stop picking their nose or doing something simple, And I thought, wow, this is fascinating stuff. And I literally got on the phone, called the guy who did the research up at University of Rhode Island, and he spent hours with me. I mean, the guy was wonderful. He spent hours talking about how I could adapt.
What was his name?
Name was James Prochaska.
Okay. Just to give him due credit.
Yep. Prochaska, DiClemente, and Norcross were the 3 guys. But Prochaska was the chief researcher. He spent hours, and I mentioned multiple times in the book, he was a wonderful man. He helped me figure out how to apply this to organizations and individuals in different settings. And that's where the breakthrough was. That was the breakthrough. When I started doing that, and the book is about the year I spent with 21 managers, actually teaching them this process, not teaching them necessarily the skills first, but talking with them directly about, here's what you're going to go through. Here are the steps we have to go through to get you to change. And it was incredible success.
This was a new process for you, Larry. You knew you needed to change. You knew yourself well enough, educated enough. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not making the connection here. And so you sought some more help. And that when you came up with these 21 managers that you implemented this new program, this was a kind of a new thing for you. And this was the backbone of the beginning of your book, correct?
Yes. And I was learning during that year. I mean, I was taking these concepts from these addiction psychologists and saying, am I going to apply this? And I was at one company, and I got their permission up front to work on it, and they said go. And it was an amazing thing.
Hold that thought, because I want to talk about the addiction issues. I've talked about addiction all the time with my own drinking issues that I've had for years and years and years. We cover this topic a lot. So I have been embedded in this for a long, long time. And as soon as I read that in the book, that another click to me. It's like, oh, here we go. We're going to talk about the 5 phases of Dr. Pfaff's book when we come back. Ready, Set, Change. Why knowing what to do isn't enough. Dr. Larry Pfaff is our guest. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to Brock Fletcher, real estate agent at the selling team with Keller Williams Realty. For more information on services provided by Brock, please call his personal cell phone at 517-303-3262 or by emailing Brock at kwsellingteam.com. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of the Tom Matt Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We're all about education and entertainment, education. And when people ask me, they say, Tom, tell me about your radio program, your podcast, and what's it all about? And it's such a long story, but the easiest answer is, I'll tell you the 2 things it's not about politics, not about religion. And sometimes they'll try to drip in here and there, but I gotta squelch that little thing, because there's plenty of that out there, and there's plenty of good stories out there, like today's interview with Dr. Larry Pfaff, talking about his book, Ready, Set, Change. We're all adapting. We're all getting better every day. If you're not getting up every day and getting better and having an attitude of gratitude, then pay attention to our radio show. Maybe we'll give you a couple of tips here, and you can learn from Dr. Pfaff here. Get his book, and we'll we'll talk about that here in a second. But before we do that, I like to do the testimonials for Brock. Brock. 517-303-3262 is the cell phone number. 517-303-3262. KWSellingTeam.com. KWSellingTeam.com. What's up, Mikey Deadman? How you doing, buddy? Testimonials. This one's from Jeff and Tammy in DeWitt, Michigan. Beautiful, beautiful area, DeWitt. Oh, yeah. Brock Fletcher and the selling team have been absolutely stellar. And absolutely stellars in bull type. Like it. You have our business for life. I mean, it's just like with Sandy and I, you guys. They got our business for life because we trust them. They were good. They're good people. They take good care. They have their team. Again, talking about the team. And we have had many conversations with Brock on the show about how the real estate industry works and how they do things differently than a lot of agents out there. Their team is really a team. And that's the thing with the selling team. Like Mike Deadman, he's a buyer's agent. Okay. He was our buyer's agent for Little House Lansing. When Brock sold our house, Big House Holt, he was our seller's agent. They all work together. And then they have the listing and they have the boom and they have the that. And we explained all that in many different shows. So go check it out. But if you just need some advice, you can either listen to our radio show podcast, go listen to those episodes, Reality of Real Estate. And I'll bet you money you're going to find your answers there. I try to do pretty good descriptors for you. So go check it out. Not going to cost you a dime, probably save you a lot of money and ingratiate you with Brock. So please do that. Tell him Tommy sent you and we'll be all good. Ready, set, change. Why knowing what to do isn't enough with Dr. Lawrence Pfaff. Dr. Pfaff's got a practical guide to personal and organizational change. We've talked about his historical perspective from his professional career. Larry, you're just now getting into the point of like you're figuring this out with your people, that you're developing this process. You found a man who helped you after 10 or 15 years of kind of swimming upstream and trying to, because you're an organizational psychologist. So you work in industry a lot. You work with groups a lot. You do a lot of speaking. And so you do a lot of coaching. And so that's your angle of your industry, but you knew something was missing. So let's pick it up there. Let's pick it up because like you said earlier, you had about a 15 to 20% success rate, which actually is pretty good. Unfortunately, if we right. So let's just pick it up from there because your book's really cool and set up very interesting. But the things that you learn from the people that you coached up, go ahead.
If you don't mind, let me say the 5 stages, if that makes sense. What are the 5 stages that those researchers found? I'll just name them off quickly. There's pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And I'll say in a few words, I can describe all 5. Pre-contemplation is I'm clueless. I don't know I have a problem. That's before I'm aware. I have no awareness. It's the person we see and everybody rolls their eyes and there goes Tom again, but he doesn't know that he's offending everybody. He doesn't have a clue. Second stage, you move out of pre-contemplation, you go to contemplation. Now, how do you get there? You get there by what I call being confronted with hard to deny data. Something hits you square between the eyes that you can't deny. In substance abuse, it's oftentimes the bottom falls out, they call it. They've lost their job, they're not functional, they're physically ill, whatever. And then they finally go, oh, maybe I have a problem. And it happens in different ways. Then from there, you move to contemplation. So now, even though you've been confronted with this hard to deny data and you realize I have a problem, you're not ready to move yet. You're ambivalent about it. And you're saying, do I want to or not? I'm not sure. So you have to work through that stage. And once you get through that and say, yes, I definitely want to do something about this, now you need to start doing preparation. And that's, what are the options? What would work for me? What would me versus other people? And there's a phase that you have to go through that. Then once you get through that preparation stage, now you're at action. And action is the actual things you need to do differently. And so pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, looking at options, now the change. And that change is slow. Once I start doing the change, I'm not there yet. I'm learning. It's struggling. It's like walking again. It's like walking for the first time. It's hard. I did an experiment with myself recently. If we have time, I'll get into it, where I learned something in the last 6 months that I never knew I was going to do it. I went through the 5 stages. And then once you do action long enough and it starts to become natural, then you're at maintenance. And maintenance is what I call the new normal. When you're finally at maintenance, it's new normal. I have people say to me, and I'm a fairly healthy person, they say, wow, how do you eat so healthy? And I say, because it's just normal for me now. If I'm on a 12-week program, I'm admitting at the front end it's going to end in 12 weeks. So I'm not committed to it. If I'm on a challenge, a 6-week challenge, I'm admitting it's going to end in 6 weeks. If I'm on a diet, the assumption is I'm going to go off the diet back to normal, which is the unhealthy. So those are the 5 stages. The hardest part is up front, is that hard to deny data hitting you and the anxiety you go through at that point.
We got a minute and a half to go, or 2 minutes to go, the end of this segment, Larry. And you mentioned a quick story of yourself 6 months ago. Go ahead and share that if you can compress that in there. Go ahead and share that story.
Yeah, there's something. I was watching a YouTube video and I saw something. There's something I've always wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to moonwalk. I wanted to learn how to moonwalk like Michael Jackson. And so I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn how to moonwalk. And I went through the stages. I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do it. I've been contemplating moonwalking for 25 years. So I committed to it. I watched a bunch of preparation. I watched lots of YouTube videos, how to train it. There were totally different methods. What do I want to do? I tried things out. Got through the preparation, got to action. I started practicing every day. And I'll tell you right now, moonwalking is totally counterintuitive and the opposite of our biology. The way we walk or do anything. It's not walking backwards. It is completely different. And I went through that phase of about 3 months of action before it. Now it's kind of natural. I could probably do it in front of a group of people. I'm not sure I'd want to, but it was that. So but you're going through the stages. It's hard. That action stage isn't the end. The action stage is another new beginning. And it was kind of fun to do. And actually, I'm okay at it. Every morning I get out and I do my moonwalk. It's easier on a smooth floor. I'll give you that advice.
Sounds like an interesting move for like a warm up for a workout. I think that sounds pretty interesting, actually. But the whole point of what you're trying to say is it was just something that you wanted to try. And how many times did we all go through these things? I mean, I went through a phase, I don't know, about 10 years ago where I wanted to learn how to play the drums. And I actually bought a kit and had it set up and took lessons and did all this and figured out that I didn't really want to play drums because it was like, but I tried and I gave it the effort and I put the time into it. And what I wound up doing is I wound up selling that drum kit and buying something that I still use to this day, my short power rack that I have in my basement in my gym in Wisconsin. It was exactly the same. It was a trade-off cost and I use that more. So it's one of those things where at least you try.
Yes, right.
Dr. Larry Pfaff's our guest today, everybody, talking about his outstanding book, Ready, Set, Change, Why Knowing What to Do Isn't Enough. Once you understand what phase you're in, or if you're helping somebody through learning or growing, identifying the phase is the secret. It's the secret sauce. And that's the whole thing. And that's why you want to pay attention to this, because it actually makes a lot of sense. And when we simplify things, things get easier. People do more of it. This is the Tom Matt Show.
This segment of the Tom Matt Show is brought to you in part by The Source of Light and Power by band leader Ark of All and broadcaster Mitch Anderson. Hear the sound that is endorsed by Odyssey headphones, linear tube audio, RME converters, and Peluso microphones at sourceoflightandpower.bandcamp.com.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Tom Matt Show. Ready, Set, Change. Ready, Set, Change. Dr. Lawrence Pfaff. You can call him Lawrence. I'll call him Larry. We can all call him Dr. Larry. How's that? Why knowing what to do isn't enough. Once you get on the program and you figure out what he's doing, you read the book. If you're a coach, being a trainer and a coach all these years that I've been, you guys, I would highly recommend reads like this, because there's so many times when we have a group that we're trying to work with, and you may have one or two in the group that could slow down the group, and you spend an inordinate amount of time with one or two people. The Pareto principle, I'm going to put 80% of my time into and get 20% of my results here. It's like, hold on a second here. check out what Dr. Pfaff's got, what he's saying about this. He'll give you all his info right now. We're going to go with his contact info. How would you like people to connect with you, Dr. Pfaff, and get a hold of you or buy the book or whatever? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, they can buy the book directly on Amazon. If they type in, Ready, Set, Change and my name, it'll pop right up. It's the only book with that name and my name. So that's the easiest way for the book. If they want to contact me, people can email me. My email is pretty simple. It's drlarry, like Dr. Larry, drlarry at att.net. So drlarry at att.net. Very simple, very easy to get a hold of me. If people want to call me, they can even call me. 269-370-0083. That's 269-370-0083. They can also go to pfaffconsulting.com, Pfaff consulting.com, and leave a message for me there. Send me a note through there. Those are the three easiest ways to get a hold of me. They can search me under my name, Lawrence Pfaff, on social media, and they'll be able to find me. There aren't many people with my last name.
It's an interesting spelling for sure, everybody. Pfaff. So I had to ask Dr. Pfaff how to pronounce your last name because, I'm trying to be polite. But yeah, Pfaff, that's the way you pronounce his last name and spell it. So there you go. I'd like to step back just a sec, Dr. Pfaff. We're talking about studying addicts and my historical perspective when it comes to alcohol abuse, alcohol use disorders, what I categorized under, alcohol use disorder. And it was actually through going through therapy that I actually figured out what the hell was wrong with me, because I went to AA, I did all these things, and I did not fit the mold. And that was it'll be 28 years here in another couple months. So back then, alcohol use disorder was nothing. There was just alcoholism or not. And it's a lot more nuanced than that. And once I figured it out through counseling, getting through with a guy like yourself, and the guy, actually my psychologist was similar to you. He didn't really practice one-on-one. He took me on as sort of a charity case, and he did forensic psychology. And so like you do organizational psychology, there's so many different areas of this, but talk about how that insight into the world of addiction helped you define this model that you came up with that I think is so, again, there's no offense at all. It's very simple.
It is.
But simple works. So go ahead and talk more about it, please.
One of the things that happened, when I learned the model from Dr. Prochaska, one of the things that hit me was, when you go through that, when you're unaware, that pre-contemplation, and then you get hit with this information that makes you aware. What I found out and what he told me is that people kind of go through a tough time right then. It's almost, and he said, he hinted at this, he said, it's almost like stages of grieving. It's a real shock. And so I actually came up with another little model within the model, and I called it SARA. And I tell people up front when they first, I said, you may be dealing with what I call SARA, S-A-R-A. So it's just an acronym. And the SARA, I say, you may go through these 4 stages. S is you may be surprised or shocked to learn this about yourself, that you're not doing things well. You may then move from shock to anger, and getting angry about it. And then you may then transfer to rationalization. I'm going to rationalize. It's because of the excuses. And what I hope you all do is eventually you'll get to the final A, which is acceptance. And that is that this is not good or bad. It's just the way it is. And you got to move on from here. And I threw that out there with these 21 managers, not knowing if that was really going to work. And my goodness, that was the secret sauce.
So you had no idea that this idea that you had sort of blossomed through your work with the other doctors. So it was a complete shot in the dark for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job, man.
I was taking a chance. And what happened, if you read the book, there are sections of that book I wrote that I still to this day laugh out loud when I read. There are sections I get emotional when I read it because I was in the room with these people. It was amazing.
Okay, well, before we get into the depth of the book, because there is some extensively really great stuff in the book, and I want to get there in a second. But before, let's talk about what we talked about yesterday during pre-production, how writing the book came to be and your process that you went through, and that kind of the funny story of yourself. And again, refirement zone stuff, everybody. This is to talk about the book, Larry. Go ahead, because writing books is hard.
It's harder than people realize. I mean, I've written a couple before, and they weren't very good, and I know that, but I was practicing. I was literally practicing.
Exactly.
I was preparing to be good at book writing. So I went through this process, I guess, with writing books. And I didn't decide to write this book. I had people approach me and say, "Would you teach us how to do consulting?" And so I originally started out preparing a program on how to consult. It was a training program on how to consult. Well, as I started preparing, I realized a key part was this model. The key part was this model of change readiness. So I thought, well, I got to get that down, write it down, because I just used it all these years. For 30 years, I've been using it. I haven't been writing it down. As I started writing down, I thought, well, I got to make this into a book. And I thought I had the book done about 3 months ago. And I thought, I'm going to read it one final time. I had a couple people, friends wrote it and said, yeah, it's good. I read the book and I got done and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, this book is awful. It stinks. It's a lecture. Who wants to read a lecture? And I had a couple examples in the book, and I said, I gotta use the examples. I gotta get what people connect to. So in the last couple months, it went from a 250-page book to about a 140-page book. It's all about mostly about the people in the book and the stories, because that's what people can relate to.
Well, that's the thing about relating to the process of writing the book. It's like being honest enough. Here's part of the deal, everybody, because if we're going to do the change, if we're going to lose the weight, if we're going to get off the drugs, if we're going to any kind of change, we're going to improve our marriages, we want self-esteem, whatever change you want to, you have to go through these steps. Anything we do, you may not know that you're going through these steps. You may automatically jump to action because you've actually been thinking about this for a while, and then you kind of thought about it in more depth for a while, right? And so you have been doing this behind the scenes, but for everything that we do, these steps work. And then the SARA acronym, that made me just think about my own issue with the drinking. So that's just, that's good. The story I wanted to first get into, and we got about a minute and a half to go, so we'll just start into this because this is depth of the book, everybody. But it was in chapter 8. It was the beginning of chapter 8, a parent's story. And I do a lot of, well, I've told you that we've interviewed students on the show many times from Michigan State University. I love working with the young people. It's very, very important. And so, and I, doing the coaching and all that kind of the youth stuff that we've done forever and ever. But I'd love for you to just kind of set it up because we won't have time to go into the depth of it. But that's a very, very good chapter. And I think it illustrates, I believe it illustrates many of the similar aspects that people go through. Can you just kind of set that up, Larry? Give me a minute on that, and then we'll come back and we'll go with that thread.
One of the managers who'd been in the program contacted me and said, I want to talk to you about something. And so we sat down and she said, it's my daughter. My daughter is disconnected. I don't know what to do with her. She was a good student, and now she just, her grades have dropped, and she just sits in her room, and I don't know what to do. About
how old was the student, just to set up?
Early teens.
Okay, so teens. Okay, that's early teens.
Early teens, like
tough age.
14, tough age. That gap between middle school and high school.
Adolescence is as a parent, I mean, it's no wonder she was calling you for advice. Go ahead. We got about 30 seconds to go, and then we'll come back. This is a great story, everybody, by the way.
I said, tell me what's going on with her and what are you trying? And that's where it was, and it was, well, this is what's happening with her and this is what I'm trying.
Okay, so leave it there because we'll come back. We'll finish this. This is a kind of a little bit of a longer story, everybody, but I want you to get the depth of it and a nice setup. Thank you for doing that, Larry, setting up this story. Dr. Lawrence Pfaff is our guest, ED, LPC. Name of his book is Ready, Set, Change, a practical guide to personal and organizational change, why knowing what to do isn't enough. And the story that we're going to talk about when we come back is a parental journey that if you're not a parent, you probably go through it with somebody at work, or you go through it with somebody that you're coaching or a friend. You've gone through this. It applies to a lot of different people. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Thank you again to Brock Fletcher, real estate agent at the selling team with Keller Williams Realty. For more information on services provided by Brock, please call his personal cell phone at 517-303-3262 or by emailing Brock at kwsellingteam.com. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome to the Tom Matt Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Tom Matt Show. I swear I wish we could figure out a way to do the in-between segment recording so that you guys could watch and listen to the stuff that we talk about. Now, of course, it would have to be internet appropriate. It wouldn't be absolutely broadcast appropriate because I'm just a sailor in another life. I swear to God, I'm a sailor. And no offense. I mean, I've actually been told by people on my little short videos. Dr. Larry Pfaff's our guest today. But I've been told by people on my little short dad talk videos when I get really rambunctious, Tom, you don't need to curse so much. You're cursing sort of, and it's like, oh God, they're right. I got to go through my own contemplation action. I got to go through it all. Yep, you're right. All right, let's get back to the story here. Dr. Larry Pfaff's here. Ready, set, change. Why knowing what to do isn't enough. And Dr. Pfaff and I were just rambling on about what the more and more we could talk about these different topics and how to keep people going in the right direction and how we all fall into our own, we fall off our own wagons. I do it all the time. I mean, Christ, I just went through 3 joint operations in 9 months. Tell me my whole schedule didn't change this last year, but it's okay. You have to accept what you have to accept. So let's go back to the story here, Larry, because I want to give you plenty of time to talk about chapter 8, because this is super important. Let me set it up again here, everybody. Chapter 8, ready, set, change. Chapter 8 is helping others change a parent's story. And I'll just let you take it from there, my friend, and take your time and talk about the 5 topics and what the heck happened here. Yeah,
so it was a parent, and we met, and she said, her daughter was, early teens, been a good student and great in school, and all of a sudden was just sitting in her room and not doing her studies and getting D's instead of her A's. And so all I said to her when we finished, with the break was, well, tell me what about your daughter and what are you doing? What are you trying to do? And, she told me about the daughter, and she said, and what I'm going in there and I'm telling her how she needs to change and how she needs to study and she needs to get a tutor. And I looked at this woman, and she'd been through my year program. So she was one of the managers, spent a year. And I said, so she's at pre-contemplation.
Which is phase 1 of your 5 steps.
And the parent looked at me and she said, exactly. And the mother looks at me and she says, oh my God, how did I not see that? How did I? And I said, because you're a parent and you love your daughter and you want to do what's best for her. So you are jumping to action stage recommendation.
You're too close. If you get too close, you're blinded. When I had this similar thing happen, Dr. Larry Pfaff's our guest today, everybody, ready, set, change. I asked my mother when I finally realized with my drinking issue, I went to my mom, God bless her soul, and I said, hey, just curious, were you ever going to say anything about my drinking problem? And she looked at me, God's honest truth, Larry, and she said, what drinking problem? So they're blinded, the codependency that you have in family relationships, you become blinded to all of the issues that are out there, and that help. That's what happens with codependency and dependencies. It's just one of those. So anyways, and we want to make sure that we tell the listeners too, if you weren't part of the previous segment, this was a young teenager that your client was working with, right? So just to be clear there, everybody. So go ahead, Larry. Continue. So then we had to talk about, well, what do you need? So what does your daughter need right now? What does she need? She needs someone who will listen. She's in this ambivalent period. She's in this, in this area where she's just starting to learn that there's an issue with this. You have to help her through this ambivalence. And because the child was displaying a lot of ambivalence. I don't care anymore. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know, and that's perfect ambivalence. She's aware, but she's just not ready. So what do you do as a parent? You have to back off. The parent got her, so she was getting counseling. But even the counseling, when the mother would come on strong with, you need to do this, then the kid would even back off from going to counseling. Because that's, mom told me to do that, and I don't want to do what I'm told to do. It was perfect. It's perfect counter behavior. The mother's doing the stuff that's 2 steps further down, not ready for it. And we do that with friends. We see, I used to have people say to me, well, why is it that my spouse, I've told them what they need to do all their life, and then they talk to a neighbor and the neighbor tells them the same thing and they do it. Well, the problem is you're too close. Right.
And the neighbor pointing it out is an unbiased person. and they listen to the unbiased person more. That's why people listen to their therapist a little bit more, probably, because they're an unbiased person. They don't have any skin in the game.
A bunch of times with students I've worked with, so many times. And it's just like, I'm a coach. I'm outside the circle. I'm not a therapist, but I do other things, and I'm not your parent. So it's like, tell me what's going on. I'm going to give you my straight feelings of it and do with it whatever you're going to do with it, because I'm not going to. I never tell people what to do. I've learned that, especially even as a trainer. It's like, and I told you during break how it can be kind of I am a harsh guy when it comes to the training stuff, but it's like, we want to get the results, and I just have to be honest with people. It's like, hey, we're going to get down and dirty. So what did this parent do? Obviously, it was a pre-contemplation that the teenager didn't feel like there was a problem. Step us through how this problem was resolved.
Well, at that point, it was, you need to back off. You need to just be a listener, and you need to just point out factual things. So, there were factual things. Grades have gone down. But when the mother came in initially, it was waving the grades in front of her face and being sarcastic,
attacking,
and chiding her and attacking. Well, as soon as, a push gets a push and a pull gets a pull. I had a mentor who said a push gets a push, a pull gets a pull. You push somebody, they're going to push back. If you want them to listen to you, you can't push.
So what are some tips that you offered for the pre-contemplation, just to sort of turn the light bulb on a little bit?
Yeah. You give them actual information, ask them to respond to that information. What do you think of this? Gee, your grades have gone down. Why do you think that is? Rather than saying your grades have gone down, you're lazy. You're ruining your life. Your future is going to be lost. And all they hear is the attack.
Let them be part of the solution.
Yeah, that's right. So it was backing off. It was listening. It was saying, I noticed that you're in your room a lot. You want to talk about that. It's backing. It's taking that more of a listening, empathic approach.
Okay, so now you've done this. Now you're at the next phase, because this will help us walk through your 5 phases thing. When we can wrap the show with this, you're coming into phase 2 now. You've laid that out. So go ahead, talk about the contemplation.
Yeah. Once the person then finally goes, I need to do something, then you start to say, well, let's talk about what that's going to take. Let's talk about, there are probably some pluses and minuses. In fact, I would call it, if I were doing, more of the therapeutic thing, I would call it an advantages, disadvantages analysis. What are the advantages of staying where I am and the disadvantages of staying where I am? What are the advantages of changing and what are the disadvantages of changing? How do I weigh that? There's this balance. There's a balance that I need to weigh. I had a client way back early on who said to me, one of the things that stuck with me forever. And he said, difficult client. And he said, my life is like a balance. And this is how he said it. I remember his exact words. He said, on one side of the balance is my current incredible state of misery. And on the other side of the balance is my incredible fear of doing anything different than misery. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a negative way to look at life. Now, how do I stimulate that? And so I could try and make him more miserable where he is, or I could try and lower the fear of changing, but it was.
But the key is in it. And again, back to the words that you used from the contemplations, the data. So you give them the data, you let them become part of the solution. We only got about 2 minutes to go here, Larry. So I want to get through this, but it's like, they're always part of the solution. Okay. As the phases go through, it's not me preaching to you, me talking down to you. It's us talking together. Right. Okay. So now we've come to a little bit of an agreement. We have an agreement, and then it's next step. Next step is
then you're facilitating. So next step is, okay. So let's talk about what we can do. If you finally admit that, there's something going on here, what could we do different? What are the options? So you just gradually move into preparation and you start talking about options, not suggesting options, but helping them discover options. And then as you go through that, they start to see things, and it naturally comes about that, maybe this and this and this would work. Oh, that's a good idea. How could we try that? Now we're starting to move toward action, and we're inching toward action. Then once they say, I'm going to try those. Okay. Even if I'm stuck and I fail, and sometimes we relapse, we recycle, that's okay. You're not a failure. That's data. Being stuck isn't a failure. It's data.
Don't forget, though, guys, and excuse me, Larry, let me jump in, but don't forget the prep. If you if you skip the prep, or if the prep becomes too much of a hassle, then you might want to step back, because if you're going to implement your action without having adequate prep, it's like painting. If you don't do enough prep, it's not going to work. And then we're coming to the close here, because we got a minute to go here. This is going to work out perfect. You've got your maintenance time, and that's your new normal. But I think the add-on point that you really, and I want to throw this to you, Larry, is your SARA acronym. What does that mean? Why is that so important at this point?
Yeah, it's important in those early stages, because when we learn something new that we didn't know about ourselves, we tend to go through those. We're surprised or shocked, like, wow, this is really surprising. This can't be true. And oftentimes we go to anger. It's like the stages of grieving almost. We become angry about, well, wait a minute, this is not true. This can't be true. But you have to work through that stage, and you finally then start to rationalize. And then after rationalization, you can eventually come to this level of acceptance.
And they all dovetail together so perfectly. Exactly. Larry, I got to close it here, because we took it right up against the wire. That was awesome. Ready, Set, Change is the name of the book. Why Knowing What to Do Isn't Enough. Dr. Lawrence Pfaff is his outstanding book. Outstanding. If our show fits your business or group's mission, we want to be of service to you through our guests. Always remember, before you can share love with others, you must love yourself first. Everybody, thank you to Dr. Larry Pfaff for being with us. Sandy, Brock, the whole crew over at the selling team. We'll talk to you next weekend, everybody. Have a great week. Go out and ignite your life. Remember, the Tom Matt Show is a production of the Boomers Rock Media. We want to bring your story to life. And lastly, I always like to say thank you so much to Mitch Anderson and to Vanessa, our production team, for doing what they do. We are out.
The Tom Matt Show is produced by Mitch Anderson of Black Circle Studios. Original music from the Source of Light and Power by the Ark of All.